before the desert winds carved their path across the sands of history, before the thunder of pharaohs fell silent beneath the stars. There was a cry, an ancient cry, that echoed between realms, hidden deep within the folds of the sea. This is not the tale as it is taught, nor as it is remembered. This is the truth buried beneath waves and wonder, where time bends and the unseen stirs. When the rod of Moses split the Red Sea, the miracle was not merely water parting. It was a rupture between worlds. The very fabric of creation trembled. Heaven held its breath, and from the chasm below surged a force older than the earth itself. A forgotten war awakens. A creature born before nations, before light itself, rises to stake its claim. The Leviathan, chained by the word, now stirs in fury beneath the watery veil. Led by divine command, Moses becomes more than a prophet. He becomes the sentinel of two realms. As Israel walks between walls of water, they march not only toward freedom, but into a battle of cosmic consequence. This is the story of that passage, of miracles and monsters, of divine fire and ancient sea. This is the hidden Exodus, where faith is a weapon, and the ocean hides more than Pharaoh's armies. Welcome to the journey. Welcome to the roar. Chapter 1. The Whisper Beneath the Sand. The desert was not silent. Though it seemed to sleep beneath a cloak of endless heat and ancient dust, it hummed with memory. Old, forgotten things buried under dunes like secrets in the soul of the earth. Moses stood alone at the edge of the camp. Behind him, a restless sea of tents, murmuring voices, bleating livestock, and the soft weeping of children filled the dawn. But before him, the sea, endless, shimmering, and impossibly still. The Red Sea, like a mirror cast from heaven, reflected a sky that offered no answers. He closed his eyes, gripping the wooden staff that had once bloomed with divine fire. His feet sank slightly into the sand, and the wind caressed his face with whispers. But the whisper was not the desert. It was older, deeper, a sound like a groan beneath the world. He opened his eyes. Behind him, the people of Israel stirred. Freed from the chains of Egypt, they now stood at the edge of promise or destruction. Pharaoh's chariots thundered somewhere beyond the dunes, their wheels spinning with the fury of betrayal. The freedom they had tasted now trembled on their lips like a half-spoken prayer. Aaron approached quietly, his face pale. "They are coming, brother." Moses nodded. "Let them come." He stepped forward, the staff in his hand, now a weight not of wood, but of destiny. The sea stretched before him, endless and impassable. The people cried out behind him, fear clawing at their hope. And then the voice, a voice not heard by the ears, but felt in the marrow. "Lift your rod, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it." He obeyed. With arms raised and heart thunderous, Moses planted his feet and called down the authority of the Almighty. Lightning cracked in a sky that moments before had been calm. The staff glowed faintly, pulsing with something ancient, something vast. The wind began to scream. Waves trembled, and then, with a roar that shook the bones of the earth, the sea split. Not gently, not peacefully. It tore open like a wound in the world. Walls of water rose violently on either side, a canyon carved by divine breath. The seabed lay exposed, dark, wet, and glistening like obsidian glass. But even in miracle, there was terror. For what was revealed was not only mud and stone. There were markings, runes etched into the seabed, glowing faintly blue, as if scrawled by a hand that had written before time began. Ancient bones lay scattered among them. Bones not of man or beast, but of things no living eye had seen. Miriam gasped behind him. "What is this?" But Moses could not answer. From the heart of the chasm, where the water held itself back by command alone, something moved. A ripple beneath the deep, a shape vast and terrible, coiling in the shadows. The Leviathan stirred, and as Israel prepared to walk the path of deliverance, they did not know they stepped into the domain of a creature whose roar had once shaken the heavens. Chapter 2. The Path Through Shadows. The first foot fell upon the exposed seabed with trembling resolve. It was a child, barefoot, clutching her mother's hand, stepping into the heart of the miracle. The walls of water loomed on either side, rising higher than the tallest tower of Pharaoh's palace. They groaned with the weight of eternity, held back by a force unseen yet all-commanding. Light shimmered through the moving waves, casting ethereal patterns upon the glistening floor like living runes written in the language of angels. One by one, the people of Israel followed, their fear masked only by the awe painted across their faces. What had begun as terror now became reverence. They were walking through the deep, through the realm of the forgotten, where once sea serpents ruled and the night of the world had no dawn. Moses walked among them, his eyes fixed not only forward but downward. The seabed bore strange markings, symbols that moved subtly as though alive. Spirals and sigils, older than Babel, hummed faintly beneath the dust of creation. The wind had not ceased. It howled through the watery corridor like a song of warning. It carried with it a scent not of salt, but of something burnt and ancient. Far behind them, the horizon trembled. A distant roar. Pharaoh's army had arrived, but their chariots hesitated at the edge of the miracle. Horses screamed and reared, resisting the pull of their masters. Even beasts could sense what lay within. Joshua, sword strapped to his back, approached Moses with concern in his eyes. "This passage is not empty," he said. "There is something else here." Moses nodded solemnly. "I have felt it since the waters parted." And then the tremor came. Beneath their feet, a pulse, like the heartbeat of something vast, shuddered through the ground. Pebbles danced. Water vibrated. The children cried out, clinging to their parents as if the very floor might give way. Somewhere in the wall of water to their right, a massive silhouette slithered just beneath the surface. Too large, too fast, too quiet. "Keep moving," Moses called out, his voice rising like a flame in the dark. "Do not look behind you. Do not fear the deep. The Lord walks with us." But even as he spoke, his own heart thundered. In the shadows ahead, the corridor twisted unnaturally. The walls of water bowed inward, as though something pressed from the other side. Shapes danced in the depths, tentacled, scaled, and unfamiliar. Eyes opened and vanished. Echoes of guttural sounds traveled the walls like ghostly drums. A boy screamed. "I saw it. The monster." His father hushed him, but others had seen too. The Leviathan no longer slept. It followed them, unseen, waiting. Then from deep within the right-hand wall, a golden light flashed, just for a moment, like a great eye-opening in the darkness. Moses stopped. He raised his staff high, its end glowing faintly, resonating with the unseen energy of the sea. The light pulsed in response, as if challenged. A voice, low, endless, and thunderous, spoke not in words, but in dread. It passed through marrow and mind. "You trespass, shepherd of clay. This passage is not yours alone." Moses stood tall. "We walk with the Most High commands." The voice growled like thunder, trapped under stone. The water behind the group shifted violently. Waves buckled, and the wall bowed outward as though something massive turned within it. The Leviathan was awakening, and the journey through the sea had just begun. Chapter 3. Leviathan stirred. The path beneath their feet seemed stable, but it was merely the surface of something restless, something waiting. As the Israelites pressed deeper into the watery corridor, the light from the world above dimmed. The walls of the sea rose even higher, now tinted with deeper hues of green and violet, as though twilight had taken residence in the heart of the ocean. And in the silence between footsteps, a vibration. It was not sound, but sensation, a hum that danced in the bones, a resonance of fear that crept like cold fingers along the spine. The elders whispered prayers. The children no longer laughed. Even the boldest warriors, their swords unused and ceremonial, gripped them now with white knuckles. Then it came, swift and terrible. From the left wall of water, a colossal fin breached the surface for a breathless instant. It tore through the shimmering face of the sea like a blade, vanishing again with a crash that sent sprays of foam into the air. The people screamed. Some turned to flee, but Moses' voice rang out like a trumpet. "Stand firm. He who parts the sea shall also bind the beast." A silence followed. Not peace, never peace, but a tension so sharp it could shatter stone. The prophet raised his staff, not toward heaven now, but toward the depths, and the staff pulsed in answer, trembling in his grasp. It began to glow, first amber, then gold, then a burning white that lit the seabed like morning. Symbols on the ground flared to life, creating a circle around Moses where the dust itself seemed to retreat. Joshua drew his blade. "Tell me what we face, my lord." "Not a beast," Moses said, eyes locked on the trembling sea. "A throne, a power older than Egypt, older than Babel. Leviathan is no animal. He is memory of chaos before the first word." The corridor narrowed, and then, like the tearing of a veil, the right wall of water split. Not collapsed, but opened, and from within emerged a mass beyond comprehension. Tentacles the size of oaks writhed through the breach. A head, draconic and crowned with coral thorns, pressed forward, its eyes twin suns of fire and judgment. Leviathan. His roar did not shake the earth. It silenced it. Sound ceased. Waves paused. Time bent. In that suspended breath, Leviathan spoke. Not in the tongue of men, nor angels, but in echo, in shadow, in instinct. "You were dust. You remain dust. Why do you walk in fire?" Moses stepped forward. "Because the fire is not ours. It is his. And you, serpent of the forgotten void, cannot undo what the Eternal has decreed." Leviathan's maw opened, darkness within darkness. But instead of lunging, he recoiled, as though struck by something unseen. The symbols beneath Moses glowed brighter. The staff surged with power, casting a radiant barrier between the creature and the people. Behind the barrier, the Hebrews pressed on, hurried now, heads down, murmuring psalms of deliverance. But even as they moved, the water around them churned. Leviathan slithered alongside the corridor, his form stretching and folding through impossible angles. At times, he seemed to vanish, only to appear ahead, peering through the wall like a phantom. He was not merely stalking. He was testing. And then, just as the last of the tribes stepped into the final third of the crossing, the sea ahead began to rise. Not just the walls, the floor. A great dome of water bulged upward, as though something massive was swimming beneath, forcing the seabed to arch. From its center, a column of dark mist burst into the air, spiraling like a cyclone of ink. From within it, something fell. A shard of bone, long, ancient, engraved with glowing sigils. Moses reached out and caught it. The moment he touched it, his eyes closed. And he saw the day the deep was chained, the binding of Leviathan, the scroll of command written in flame, and a name not spoken for ages, etched in light and sealed in judgment. He opened his eyes. "This is not merely a passage," he whispered. "It is a test, a covenant reforged in the face of the abyss." The roar returned, and this time it echoed with rage. Chapter 4. The Covenant of the Abyss. The roar of Leviathan faded into a low, menacing growl as the massive creature retreated briefly into the depths. Yet the tension remained, thick as the salt air hanging over the parted sea. Moses clutched the ancient bone shard tightly, its glowing sigils pulsing faintly beneath his fingertips, as if alive with the power of forgotten ages. Around him, the Israelites murmured prayers, their voices trembling yet steadfast, carried on the winds that whispered through the watery corridor. The ground beneath their feet was no longer a simple seabed. It had become sacred ground, consecrated by the weight of unseen forces. Joshua approached cautiously, eyes fixed on the shard. "What is this relic, Moses? What power does it hold?" Moses' gaze was distant, as if peering through the veils of time itself. "This shard is a fragment of the covenant that bound Leviathan eons ago, the ancient pact between the Creator and the deep. It is both a key and a warning. The people exchanged uneasy glances. To walk through the sea was to enter a realm where the boundaries between worlds blurred. The past and the present converged here, and so did the forces of chaos and order. Suddenly, the waters above began to shimmer, the walls rippling with ethereal light. From the depths, tendrils of mist rose, weaving patterns that danced like serpents of silver and gold. The air was charged with a celestial energy, as if the very heavens had turned their gaze upon this crossing. Moses raised his staff once more, the bone shard now glowing brightly in his other hand. He spoke words in a language older than Hebrew, syllables humming with divine authority. The shimmering tendrils responded, coiling around the staff and the shard, forming a radiant seal that sealed the passage. It was a barrier of light and power, a covenant renewed in the face of the abyss. Leviathan's roar echoed again, louder and filled with fury. The great beast surged forward, tentacles lashing against the glowing barrier, shaking the very foundations of the parted sea. But the seal held firm, a testament to the authority of the Most High. Moses turned to the people. The path is guarded, not just by the sea, but by the legacy of creation itself. We must walk with courage and faith, for the Leviathan tests our resolve and the strength of our covenant. With renewed determination, the Israelites pressed forward, their footsteps steady upon the consecrated seabed. The journey through the sea was no longer just an escape. It was a passage of trials, a journey of faith and confrontation with the ancient powers that sought to reclaim the darkness. As they moved deeper into the watery corridor, the glow of the covenant's seal illuminated their way, a beacon of hope against the encroaching shadows. The miracle of the Red Sea was unfolding, not just as a physical deliverance, but as a cosmic battle between light and darkness, order and chaos. And at the heart of it stood Moses, bearer of the covenant, confronting the roar of the Leviathan with the unshakable authority of the Almighty. Chapter 5: Shadows Beneath the Waves. The Israelites moved forward beneath the vault of shimmering waters, the radiant seal casting a golden glow around their feet. Yet, despite the light, shadows lingered, long and twisting, like fingers reaching from the deep to snatch at the faithful. Moses kept his staff raised, the ancient bone shard glowing steadily, a beacon warding off the darkness. Still, the air grew thick with a creeping chill, a whisper of forgotten terrors stirring beneath the sea. From the depths came a subtle movement, shapes sliding silently just beyond sight. The creatures of the abyss, ancient and unseen, watched with eyes like molten gold and shadows darker than night. They knew this crossing was not a mere passage, but a challenge to their dominion. Suddenly, a ripple broke the surface of the pathway, and from the water emerged a creature unlike any the people had seen. Its body was a swirling mass of scales and seaweed, eyes blazing with an eerie light. It hissed, voice like the grinding of stones, a guardian of the dark realm. Moses stepped forward, voice steady and strong. By the power of the Most High, you shall not hinder these chosen ones. Begone, spirit of the abyss. The creature shrieked and lunged, but the staff in Moses' hand flared with brilliant fire. A barrier of light erupted, halting the beast in its tracks. It recoiled, retreating into the depths with a final, echoing growl. The path remained open, but the tension only grew. Every step forward was met with unseen eyes. Every breath taken beneath the sea carried the weight of ancient watchfulness. Yet the people did not falter. Their faith was their shield, their prayers a shield of unyielding strength. And Moses, bearer of the covenant, stood unwavering at the forefront, ready to face whatever darkness the Leviathan's realm would send next. The battle between light and shadow had only just begun. Chapter 6: The Whispering Abyss. As the Israelites advanced, the waters above and around them whispered, a susurration of voices from realms unseen. The sound was not of men, nor beasts, but of something older, a language woven from the depths of time and shadow. It curled around their minds, planting seeds of doubt and fear. Moses felt it first, a prickling along his skin, as if the very essence of the abyss sought to invade his soul. He tightened his grip on the staff and glanced at the faces around him. The people's eyes darted nervously, their faith tested by the unseen murmurs carried by the water. "These voices," Moses said, "are the echoes of forgotten chaos. They seek to unravel our resolve, to turn us from the path the Almighty has set." Joshua tightened his jaw. "How do we fight what we cannot see?" Moses raised the glowing shard, letting its light pulse steadily. "With faith stronger than fear, with the word that commands the heavens and the earth." A sudden chill swept through the corridor, and from the depths rose shadows, twisted shapes that danced at the edge of sight, whispering words of despair and hopelessness. The whispers grew louder, weaving through the minds of the Israelites, threatening to drown their hope. But Moses began to chant, a song ancient as the stars, filled with power and conviction. The glow from the shard spread like wildfire, pushing back the darkness, silencing the whispers. One by one, the shadows dissolved, leaving behind the sound of steady footsteps and quiet prayers. Leviathan's roar echoed once more, fierce and furious, but now it was met with a defiant silence, a testament to a people who chose faith over fear. The journey through the abyss was far from over, but the light of the covenant burned brighter than ever. And Moses knew the true battle was not just against the beast in the sea, but against the darkness within. They would stand. They would fight. They would cross. The miracle of deliverance had only just begun. Chapter 7. The depths tremble. The air hung heavy with tension as the Israelites continued their steady march through the miraculous corridor of the parted sea. The waters stretched endlessly on either side, towering walls shimmering like liquid glass, reflecting the fading light of the burning horizon. Beneath their feet, the seabed pulsed faintly, as if the earth itself was alive, breathing and trembling under the weight of some ancient, slumbering force. Moses paused, his keen eyes scanning the churning darkness below the water surface. The whispering abyss was no longer silent. A deep, guttural vibration shook the sea floor, and a foreboding ripple surged through the water walls. The Leviathan, the monstrous guardian of the deep, was awakening. From the black depths emerged a silhouette vast and terrible, a creature forged in the primordial chaos before the dawn of time. Its massive scales gleamed like shards of obsidian, rough and jagged, reflecting the faint glow of the covenant shard in Moses' hand. Two blazing eyes, hot as molten gold, locked onto the intruders with a fury that could melt stone. A roar erupted, a sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of reality, shaking the parted sea as if the heavens themselves were trembling. The ground quaked beneath the feet of the Israelites, and the walls of water roared in response, as if the sea was alive and wrathful. With a savage strike of its monstrous tail, Leviathan sent a wave crashing toward the faithful, the sea's mighty walls trembling under the impact. The water threatened to flood the path, to swallow the people whole and erase their salvation. Panic rippled through the crowd as mothers clutched their children and warriors tightened their grips on crude weapons. But Moses stood unyielding, his figure framed by the golden light radiating from the ancient shard he held aloft. The glow grew brighter, bathing the entire corridor in a celestial radiance that pushed back the growing darkness. Raising his staff, Moses spoke with a voice that reverberated with divine authority. "By the covenant of the Most High, I command you, Leviathan, cease your wrath. This path is sealed by the promise of the Almighty. You shall not harm his chosen." The words were more than a command. They were a declaration of cosmic power, an invocation of a covenant older than the seas. The bone shard pulsed, sending out waves of brilliant light that fractured the storm's fury. The crashing waves slowed, halted, and were held back by an invisible barrier stronger than stone or steel. Leviathan bellowed in frustration, massive jaws snapping with fury, yet the barrier endured. The creature thrashed wildly, shaking the waters with violent rage, but could not breach the sacred boundary. Around Moses, the Israelites lifted their voices in unison, a chorus of prayers, hymns, and cries for deliverance. Their faith formed a spiritual shield, their hearts beating as one with the divine promise that protected them. The power of their belief, combined with the ancient covenant, form an unbreakable bond against the chaos seeking to engulf them. Joshua, standing close beside Moses, shouted over the roar, "Their fury is great, but our God is greater. Hold firm, keep moving forward." Step by step, the Israelites advanced, their resolve steeled by the sight of their leader standing resolute before the storm. Each footfall was a triumph over fear, each breath a testament to hope. The miracle of the Red Sea was not simply the parting of waters. It was a battle waged across dimensions, a confrontation between order and chaos, light and darkness. Moses locked eyes with Leviathan, their gazes locked in a silent war of wills. The beast was more than a creature of flesh and scale. It was the embodiment of primal destruction, a force seeking to reclaim the world in shadow. But Moses was the bearer of the covenant, an emissary of divine power and purpose. With one final cry, Leviathan roared, a sound echoing through time and space. But Moses stood firm, the light of the Most High blazing like a beacon against the storm. The battle was far from over. The depths still held their secrets, and the path was perilous. But the miracle was real, the covenant unbroken, and the people of Israel, under Moses' command, would walk through the sea to freedom. The depths trembled, the Leviathan roared, but faith, courage, and the divine promise burned brighter still. Chapter 8, The Silent Storm. The Leviathan's roar echoed in the vast emptiness, a chilling sound that seemed to shake the very heavens. Yet, beneath that fury, a strange silence began to creep over the waters. The walls of the sea, though still towering and glistening, took on an eerie stillness, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Moses tightened his grip on the staff, the glowing shard steady in his palm, its light cutting through the gathering shadows. The Israelites pressed forward, their footsteps steady but cautious, hearts pounding with a mixture of awe and fear. The sea was no longer just a path. It had become a battlefield between ancient forces beyond human comprehension. Every ripple, every whisper of the waves, carried the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. Suddenly, from the dark waters emerged shapes, serpentine forms twisting and writhing with malicious intent. These creatures of shadow and scale, born from the depths of the abyss, slithered silently, their eyes glinting with hunger and malice. They sought to drag the faithful beneath the waves, to shatter the fragile divide, and return all to the chaos below. But the light from the shard flared brightly, casting long shadows and driving back the darkness. Moses raised his voice, chanting words that rang with divine power, a sacred song that bound the sea and calmed the storm. The creatures hissed and recoiled, unable to breach the shield of faith and light that surrounded the people. One by one, they vanished back into the abyss, their silent threat quelled by the unyielding resolve of those who walked the path of deliverance. Around Moses, the people murmured prayers, their voices weaving a tapestry of hope and courage. They knew the battle was far from over, but the miracle continued, their steps forward a testament to the strength found in unity and faith. The silent storm raged beneath the surface, but above, the promise of freedom shone brighter than ever. The journey through the Red Sea was a passage not just of water, but of spirit, a crossing from bondage into destiny, from fear into the light of the Almighty. And with every step, the roar of the Leviathan grew more distant, replaced by the rising song of salvation. Chapter 9, The Covenant's Edge. The walls of water towered high, their glistening surfaces catching the fading light as the Israelites pressed deeper into the heart of the sea. Each step forward was a step into the unknown, a crossing not only through water, but between realms where the seen and unseen collided. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of destiny pressing upon every soul. Moses walked at the forefront, the ancient bone shard in his hand pulsing steadily with a radiant glow. This was no ordinary light. It was the covenant's power made manifest, a divine beacon against the encroaching darkness. His eyes burned with a solemn fire as he sensed the gathering forces beneath the waves, shadows stirring in the depths like coiled serpents waiting to strike. Suddenly, a low rumble rose from the abyss, a warning, a challenge. The Leviathan had not yet surrendered. Its massive form sliced through the water, scales shimmering like polished onyx, eyes blazing with primordial rage. The great beast circled the pathway, its presence a living wall of menace and power. Moses raised his staff, channeling the ancient power granted by the Most High. The light from the bone shard flared brighter, weaving through the watery corridor like strands of pure energy. By the covenant made before time, I claim this path for my people. No shadow shall cross us. With a thunderous roar, Leviathan lunged forward, jaws snapping with terrible force. But the light held firm, a barrier forged of faith, will, and divine authority. The creature thrashed, its fury rippling through the sea, yet it could not break the sacred bond. Behind Moses, the Israelites held their ground, their voices rising in a crescendo of prayer and praise. They were more than witnesses. They were warriors in a spiritual battle, their faith the shield that protected them from oblivion. The covenant's edge had been drawn, dividing light from darkness, order from chaos. And though the sea trembled beneath the clash, the promise of deliverance shone brighter still. As the Leviathan roared in frustration, the people stepped forward, united and unbroken, ready to cross from bondage into freedom, from despair into the glory of the promised land. Chapter 10. The Breath of the Ancients. A heavy silence settled over the path carved through the raging Red Sea, a silence so profound it seemed to swallow the cries and footsteps of the thousands crossing its floor. The towering walls of water on either side shimmered faintly, reflecting the dying light of the sun, yet there was something unnatural in their stillness. The very air felt thick, heavy with unseen forces stirring just beneath the surface, whispering secrets older than time itself. Moses stood resolute at the front of the procession, his hand gripping the ancient bone shard, now glowing with a fierce and steady light that pierced the gathering darkness. This light was no mere illumination. It was a manifestation of the covenant between the Most High and His chosen, a sacred power entrusted to guide and protect them through the abyssal threat lurking ahead. Beneath the waves, the sea's depths churned with restless energy. The Leviathan, ancient beast of the abyss, was far from vanquished. From the murky depths, tendrils of darkness writhed and coiled like serpents, each movement stirring the waters into ominous currents that threatened to collapse the fragile path. The creature's breath was a chilling gale that seemed to rise from the very bowels of the earth, carrying with it the cold, biting chill of the ancient abyss. It was the breath of the ancients, a power forged before the dawn of man, imbued with the raw fury of creation itself. The Leviathan's massive form shimmered beneath the waves, eyes glowing with primordial rage and cunning. It was a creature born from the cosmic chaos, a living nightmare summoned to punish those who dared defy the old order. It sought to swallow the people whole, dragging them back into the darkness where light dared not dwell. Yet Moses did not waver. His voice rose in a steady chant, ancient words flowing like a sacred river, echoing with divine authority. The glowing shard in his hand flared, sending ribbons of pure light streaming outward, weaving a protective veil over the people. The light carved a barrier that shimmered and pulsed with life, shielding the Israelites from the Leviathan's wrath. Around Moses, the people clung to their faith, their hearts united in a silent prayer. Every breath was a defiant testament against despair, every step forward a declaration of hope. Though the darkness sought to consume them, their spirits blazed brighter than any shadow. The path was no longer merely a passage through water. It was a trial of souls, a crucible where the covenant was tested against the fury of the abyss. The breath of the ancients hissed and howled, stirring the waters in a violent tempest that threatened to drown all hope. Yet the light held firm, cutting through the storm like a sword forged in heaven's fire. It was a battle beyond mortal ken, a cosmic struggle between the light of faith and the shadows of oblivion. The Israelites pressed onward, hearts beating as one, driven by a promise older than the mountains. The covenant of the Most High was alive in their veins, a living flame that no darkness could extinguish. With every step, the roar of the Leviathan grew fainter, drowned beneath the rising chorus of salvation. As the last rays of sunlight kissed the watery walls, Moses lifted his staff high. The light blazed brighter than ever, a beacon of hope piercing the twilight. The breath of the ancients was no match for the power of faith, a truth etched into the very fabric of the universe. The crossing was far from over, but in that moment, the impossible seemed within reach. The sea held its breath, the Leviathan's rage was tempered, and the covenant's light shone eternal. The journey through the Red Sea was not just a miracle. It was a testament to the enduring power of faith, courage, and the unbreakable bond between the Most High and his people. Chapter 11. The Shadows Stir. As the last golden hues of the sun slipped beneath the horizon, the path through the Red Sea grew colder, darker. The towering walls of water, once shimmering with divine light, now loomed like silent sentinels guarding secrets too ancient for mortal minds. The Israelites, weary but unyielding, pressed forward, each step echoing against the watery barricades. Moses tightened his grip on the glowing bone shard. Its light dimmed but steady, a fragile thread of hope in the deepening gloom. Around him, whispers rose, a low murmur among the people, as if the very air carried the voices of forgotten souls, warning of dangers unseen. Beneath the surface, the Leviathan stirred anew. Its massive form twisted and coiled, sending ripples that threatened the fragile divide. From the depths, shadows emerged, creatures born of darkness, forged in the abyss before time began. They moved with silent menace, eyes gleaming like stars swallowed by night. These were the guardians of the deep, ancient sentinels bound by a covenant older than the heavens. Their purpose was clear: to drag the children of Israel into the void, to erase their hope before it could ignite into salvation. Moses raised his staff high, the shard flaring to life as he intoned words of power, a song that resonated with the very soul of creation. Light burst forth, spilling over the path, chasing the shadows back into the depths. The people felt the surge, their hearts lifted, their faith rekindled. But the battle was far from over. As the shadows recoiled, the sea whispered of secrets yet unrevealed. The Leviathan's roar echoed like thunder, shaking the earth and sky alike. It was a roar not just of rage, but of ancient sorrow, a lament for a world lost to chaos. Moses stood firm, a beacon amidst the storm. His voice, steady and strong, carried the promise of deliverance. The covenant lived in him, in every breath, every heartbeat. The light of the bone shard was more than a weapon. It was a testament to the unyielding spirit of a people bound by faith. The Israelites moved forward, their shadows cast long and flickering against the towering walls of water. Each step was a defiance of the abyss, a claim upon the future. The path was perilous, the darkness pressing ever closer, but their resolve burned brighter than the Leviathan's fury. The night deepened, but so did the light. The journey through the Red Sea was no longer a mere passage. It was a battle for the soul of a nation, a clash between the ancient forces of darkness and the indomitable will of faith. And as the Leviathan's shadows stirred beneath the waves, the covenant's light blazed stronger than ever. Chapter 12. The Flame of Divine Authority. The night had settled deeply over the parted waters, yet the path through the Red Sea was far from calm. The towering walls of water, illuminated faintly by the moon's silver glow, seemed to pulse with a living power. Each ripple whispered secrets of the ancient abyss, warning of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. The Israelites marched forward, their footsteps steady but filled with the tension of the unseen forces that awaited them. Moses gripped the sacred bone shard tightly. Its glow had grown from a faint flicker into a radiant blaze, casting a golden light that danced upon the rippling walls of water. This was no ordinary flame. It was the flame of divine authority, a celestial power granted by the Most High himself. With this flame, Moses was the vessel of a covenant far older than time, charged with the sacred mission of leading his people to freedom. Beneath the surface, the Leviathan stirred once more. Its colossal form coiled through the abyss, eyes glowing like twin stars swallowed by darkness. The ancient beast exhaled a tempestuous breath, stirring whirlpools and churning the waters in an attempt to collapse the fragile passage. From the depths, shadowy creatures, remnants of a primordial chaos, emerged, their forms shifting and twisting like smoke, intent on dragging the Israelites into the dark void below. But the flame of divine authority burned fiercely in Moses' hand, pushing back the shadows with a radiant wave of light. He lifted his voice in a thunderous chant, ancient words vibrating with power, echoing through the parted sea. The very air around him shimmered, as if charged with the presence of angels unseen. The Israelites felt the surge of this celestial power within themselves, their fear replaced by fierce courage and unshakable faith. The waters on either side responded to the sacred flame. The once threatening walls now stood as protective sentinels, their turbulent energy subdued by the divine presence. The whirlpools calmed, and the churning tempest stilled, as if the sea itself had bowed before the covenant that Moses bore. Yet the Leviathan was relentless. With a roar that shook the heavens, it summoned all its strength, a final desperate assault to reclaim what was lost. The waters trembled as the beast surged forward, a dark wave threatening to engulf the pathway and all who walked it. Moses raised the bone shard high, its light exploding into a pillar of divine fire that pierced the darkness like a sword. The clash between light and shadow was fierce and magnificent, a cosmic battle playing out on the stage of mortal history. The Israelites stood firm, their spirits alight with hope, their eyes fixed on the glowing flame that symbolized their salvation. With every chant, every step, the flame grew stronger, pushing the forces of darkness back into the abyss. In that sacred light, the future of a nation was being forged. The path through the Red Sea was more than a passage. It was a testament to the power of faith, a victory of divine authority over the primordial chaos. And as the night wore on, the flame of divine authority burned ever brighter, guiding the Israelites toward their promised destiny. Chapter 13, The Gathering Storm. The air grew thick with anticipation as the Israelites pressed onward through the narrow corridor of sea and sky. The path, carved by divine will, stretched ahead like a fragile thread woven between two vast cathedrals of water. The towering walls shimmered faintly under the cold light of distant stars, but beneath that serene surface, a tempest brewed, a storm born not of weather, but of ancient rage and relentless fury. Moses stood at the forefront, his figure a steadfast beacon against the encroaching shadows. The bone shard in his hand pulsed steadily, casting a warm glow that illuminated the faces of those who followed. Each step forward was a declaration, a vow to defy the darkness that sought to consume them. Beneath the waves, the Leviathan writhed and roared, its monstrous body twisting like a serpent summoned from the abyss itself. Its eyes, burning with an eldritch fire, surveyed the fragile breach in a world it had guarded for eons. The creature's fury was palpable, shaking the very foundations of the sea. Around it, other creatures of the deep stirred, spectral forms born from nightmares and shadow. Their whispers curled through the water, an ominous chorus of voices promising oblivion. They surged upward, gathering strength for an assault that would test the limits of faith and courage. Yet the flame of divine authority within Moses blazed undiminished. He lifted his voice in a chant older than memory, a song woven from the fabric of creation itself. The light flared, spilling over the path like molten gold, pushing back the darkness inch by inch. The Israelites felt the surge of celestial power course through their veins. Fear dissolved into resolve. Exhaustion was replaced by a fierce determination to claim their destiny. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Warriors squared their shoulders for the coming battle. The path was no longer merely a passage. It was a battlefield where faith would be forged in fire. Suddenly, the waters roared as the Leviathan unleashed its fury, a tidal wave that threatened to sweep the entire host into the abyss. Moses stepped forward, the shard raised high, and with a cry that echoed to the heavens, he commanded the waters to obey. The flame leapt forth, a pillar of divine fire that struck the wave, fracturing it into harmless spray. The storm raged around them, but the path held firm. The covenant's light carved a sanctuary amidst the chaos. Each breath, each heartbeat, was a testament to the enduring power of faith over fear, light over darkness. As dawn approached, the sea stilled once more, the storm retreating into the depths. The Israelites stood united, their eyes shining with hope and the promise of freedom. The journey was far from over, but the gathering storm had been met and overcome. Chapter 14. The Edge of Deliverance. The pale light of dawn stretched across the horizon, casting a fragile glow over the shimmering walls of water that framed the path before the Israelites. The narrow corridor carved through the Red Sea was more than a miracle. It was a testament to the boundless power of the divine and a challenge to every heart that dared to trust in the unseen. Moses stood at the vanguard, the bone shard in his hand still faintly pulsing with an inner flame. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the first birds of morning took flight, their cries echoing like whispers of hope. Behind him, the people moved as one, men, women, and children whose footsteps echoed with the rhythm of faith and fear intertwined. The sea walls, once roaring with the fury of Leviathan's rage, now held a glassy stillness that belied the lurking danger beneath. The ancient creature's presence was a shadow in the depths, a silent guardian of the abyss that had not yet relinquished its claim. The waters shimmered with an eerie light, revealing glimpses of dark shapes and restless currents, as if the very ocean itself waited for the final reckoning. Around Moses, the murmurs of prayer rose and fell like a sacred tide. The voices of the Israelites mingled with the soft lapping of the water, creating a melody of hope that defied the encroaching darkness. Mothers clasped their children tightly, offering whispered assurances, while warriors adjusted their grips on worn staffs and makeshift weapons, eyes fierce with determination. Suddenly, a tremor rippled through the ground beneath their feet, a vibration that seemed to pulse in time with the beating of their hearts. Moses lifted the glowing shard high, its light blossoming like a star born anew. The sea walls responded, their surfaces shimmering with ancient symbols, glyphs of power and protection etched by the hands of time itself, glowing faintly as if infused with divine breath. The Leviathan stirred in the abyss, its eyes like twin infernos burning with unquenched wrath. The ancient beast roared beneath the waves, sending tremors through the waters that echoed in the bones of the Israelites. But Moses held firm, his voice rising in a command that split the dawn air, a chant older than the mountains, a call for the sea to hold its peace and the path to remain clear. Light surged from the shard, weaving a protective veil around the people, a barrier that shimmered with holy fire. The tremor subsided, the roar faded, and the waters calmed once more, though the danger was far from gone. The covenant was alive, a living bond between the Almighty and His chosen, and it held the power to turn back even the darkest of shadows. As the Israelites pressed forward, the narrow path stretched endlessly ahead, a thin line of hope carved through the heart of chaos. Every step was a testament to faith's triumph over fear, a march toward a destiny forged in the fires of divine will. Beyond the waters, beyond the storm, the promise of freedom awaited, fragile, radiant, and eternal. The edge of deliverance was here, and with it, the dawn of a new era. Chapter 15, The Final Crossing. The horizon blazed with the colors of awakening, gold, pink, and violet weaving a tapestry of light that heralded the breaking of a new day. The Israelites moved steadily forward, their footsteps steady but filled with the weight of the journey behind and the uncertainty that lay beyond. The waters, held back by the miracle wrought through Moses' command, rose like towering walls, silent sentinels guarding the fragile passage between worlds. Moses walked at the forefront, his heart a tempest of resolve and prayer. The glowing bone shard in his hand pulsed steadily, its light a beacon against the creeping shadows that still lingered beneath the surface. Though the Leviathan had been beaten back, its darkness had not vanished. It prowled beneath the waves like a restless phantom, waiting for a moment to reclaim what it considered its own. The sea floor trembled faintly beneath their feet, a subtle reminder that the abyss was alive and watching. The very air seemed charged with an ancient power, the memory of battles waged long before human eyes had witnessed. But the Israelites pressed on, their faith stronger than the fear that sought to claim them. Behind them, the Egyptian chariots thundered, their riders driven by fury and desperation. The pursuing army's shouts echoed against the sea walls, a clamor of wrath that met an immovable barrier forged by divine will. The waters rippled ominously as the Leviathan stirred once more, its great jaws parting to unleash a roar that shook the heavens. But Moses raised the bone shard high, and a radiant light poured forth, bathing the sea in a holy fire. The waters surged forward, crashing down in a mighty wave that swallowed the chariots and swept away the darkness. The Leviathan's roar was silenced beneath the crushing tide, its power broken by the covenant that bound heaven and earth. As the wave receded, the Israelites found themselves on the far shore, free, yet forever changed. They looked back at the sea, now calm and still, a silent witness to the miracle that had delivered them from death and despair. Moses lowered his hand, exhaustion and triumph mingling in his gaze. The journey was far from over, but in that moment, the promise of deliverance burned brighter than ever. The roar of the Leviathan was stilled, and the path to freedom lay open before them, radiant as the dawn. Their story was just beginning. Thank you for watching our channel. We hope this journey through faith and adventure has inspired you. Stay tuned for more stories that awaken the spirit and ignite the imagination. Until next time, may your path be filled with light and courage.